Imagine planting flowers one single time, and years later, they're still returning on their own. No expensive replanting. No constantly buying new flowers every spring. No empty flower beds waiting to be filled again. Instead, tiny seedlings quietly appear across the garden every season like nature is doing the work for you. Now here's where things get interesting. Most gardeners assume beautiful flower gardens require endless maintenance, constant watering, constant planting, constant spending. But experienced gardeners understand something completely different. The smartest gardens slowly begin managing themselves. That changes everything, because some flowers don't just bloom once and disappear. They reseed naturally, quietly dropping seeds into the soil year after year until entire gardens begin filling themselves automatically. In fact, one self-seeding flower later on this list spread so successfully many gardeners never need to buy it again once it becomes established. Today I'm showing you 11 self-seeders you should plant in June if you want your garden filling itself forever. The kinds of flowers experienced gardeners quietly rely on to create low-maintenance landscapes overflowing with color season after season. Now here's the problem this solves. Most gardens look incredible for 1 year, then become exhausting. Plants die, beds empty out, costs increase, and eventually many homeowners stop enjoying gardening entirely because maintenance never ends. But self-seeding flowers completely change that experience. Experienced gardeners understand. The best gardens become easier over time instead of harder. Now imagine two gardeners. One spends every spring buying replacement flowers again and again. The other plants flowers once, then watches seedlings naturally return every season with almost no effort. The second garden becomes dramatically more relaxing emotionally and financially. That difference matters more than people realize, especially now, because millions of Americans are searching for lower-maintenance gardens that still feel abundant and beautiful without constant work. And, strangely enough, some of the easiest flowers to grow are also the ones most capable of reproducing naturally year after year. Now, here's something powerful. Self-seeding flowers don't just save money. They create emotional surprise. Every season becomes slightly different. New flowers appear in unexpected places. Butterflies arrive earlier. Pollinators increase naturally. The garden starts feeling alive instead of controlled. That changes the entire emotional experience of gardening. Now, before we begin, pay attention to which self-seeder surprises you most on this list, because one flower later on may completely eliminate the need to replant entire sections of your garden ever again. And the first flower on this list may be one of the easiest self-seeding plants any beginner gardener can successfully grow in America. Part 2, number 11, Calendula. Calendula almost looks too cheerful to be this useful. Bright orange blooms, golden yellow flowers glowing under summer sunlight, soft green foliage filling garden beds quickly once temperatures warm up. And, honestly, very few flowers make gardens feel happier the moment they bloom. Now here's where things get interesting. Calendula doesn't just reseed. It practically volunteers itself everywhere, once established. Tiny seedlings quietly appear around the garden every spring without gardeners lifting a finger. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many flower beds feel empty between planting seasons. Bare soil appears. Weeds move in. Gardens lose emotional energy fast. But calendula naturally fills those empty spaces surprisingly well. Experienced gardeners understand. Nature hates exposed soil. That changes how self-seeding gardens are designed. Now here's the bonus value. Calendula flowers are edible. Pollinators love them. And the blooms continue appearing for months during cooler growing seasons. Some gardeners even use petals in herbal teas, salves, and homemade skin products. That's enormous value from one easy flower. Now here's the expert tip. Allow some flowers to fully dry and drop seeds naturally at the end of the season. Don't deadhead every bloom. Self-seeding only works when seed heads mature completely. Most beginner gardeners accidentally prevent reseeding by removing flowers too aggressively. Experienced gardeners always leave a few blooms behind, intentionally. Now imagine this. Soft spring sunlight hitting fresh calendula seedlings quietly emerging across garden beds all on their own after winter ends. The garden already feels alive again before planting season even begins. That emotional surprise matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly buys new annual flowers every year. The other allows self-seeding flowers like calendula to quietly rebuild the garden naturally season after season. The second garden becomes dramatically easier to maintain, emotionally and financially. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The best gardens are not forced constantly. They evolve naturally over time, and calendula may be one of the easiest flowers for teaching that lesson beautifully. But while calendula quietly fills gardens with golden blooms year after year, the next flower on this list spreads so effortlessly many gardeners discover seedlings blooming in places they never even planted them originally. Number 10. Cosmos. Cosmos creates a completely different feeling in a self-seeding garden. Tall, airy stems, soft pink, white, and magenta blooms floating above the landscape almost like butterflies moving through the wind. And honestly, the flowers make gardens feel alive in a way rigid landscaping never can. Now here's where things get interesting. Cosmos self-seeds aggressively once mature flowers begin drying naturally. In fact, some gardeners plant cosmos only once, then continue seeing new flowers appear for years afterward with almost no effort. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many gardens start feeling visually stiff over time. Too controlled, too organized, too predictable. But Cosmos brings movement back into the landscape. Experienced gardeners understand. Natural movement creates emotional softness in gardens. Now here's the bonus value. Butterflies absolutely love Cosmos. Pollinators cover the flowers constantly during summer and early fall. And because the plants grow fast from seed, they fill large, empty garden areas surprisingly quickly for almost no cost. Some gardeners even scatter leftover seeds directly onto bare soil with excellent results. Now here's the expert tip. Avoid overly rich soil. Too much fertilizer creates weak, floppy growth with fewer blooms. Cosmos actually flowers more heavily in leaner conditions. And leave dried flower heads standing late in the season if you want maximum reseeding. Most beginner gardeners clean beds too aggressively before seeds fully mature. Experienced gardeners allow nature to finish the cycle first. Now imagine this. Warm summer wind moving through tall cosmos blooms while butterflies drift quietly across flowers that reseeded themselves naturally from the previous year. The entire garden feels softer, freer, more alive. That emotional atmosphere matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly replants perfectly controlled flower beds every season. The other allows self-seeding flowers to create natural movement and surprise throughout the garden. The second landscape feels dramatically more peaceful emotionally. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The most beautiful gardens rarely look completely controlled. And Cosmos may be one of the best flowers for creating that effortless beauty naturally. But while Cosmos fills gardens with movement and softness, the next flower on this list spreads so reliably, some gardeners jokingly call it the flower that refuses to leave once it's happy. Number 9. Nigella, Love in a Mist. Nigella almost looks too delicate to survive in ordinary gardens. Soft, feathery foliage, star-shaped blue-white or pale pink flowers floating above fine green leaves. And honestly, the blooms almost look like tiny watercolor paintings growing directly from the soil. Now here's where things get interesting. Nigella self-seeds incredibly well once the seed pods mature. And those seed pods, they may be even more beautiful than the flowers themselves. That changes everything. Because after blooming finishes, decorative balloon-like seed pods remain standing across the garden, drying naturally in place. Eventually, seeds spill quietly into the soil beneath them. Then fresh seedlings return the following season almost automatically. Experienced gardeners understand. Some flowers create beauty long after blooming ends. Now here's the problem this solves. Many gardens feel empty once flowers fade. Everything disappears too quickly. But Nigella continues adding structure through dried seed pods while simultaneously reseeding itself for the future. That creates a completely different gardening experience emotionally. Now here's the bonus value. Nigella grows surprisingly easily from direct sowing, and because the flowers bloom early, they help bridge the emotional gap between spring bulbs and peak summer flowers beautifully. Some gardeners also dry the seed pods for indoor arrangements lasting months. Now here's the expert tip. Allow seed pods to dry fully on the plant before cleanup, and avoid disturbing soil heavily where Nigella reseeds naturally. Tiny seedlings emerge best in relatively undisturbed garden beds. Most beginner gardeners accidentally destroy seedlings while aggressively turning soil each season. Experienced gardeners leave self-seeding areas more natural intentionally. Now imagine this. Cool early morning sunlight glowing through delicate Nigella seed pods while fresh seedlings quietly emerge nearby from last year's flowers. The garden feels timeless somehow, almost self-aware. That emotional continuity matters deeply. Now, imagine two gardeners. One removes every faded flower immediately after blooming ends. The other allows certain flowers to complete their natural cycle fully. The second garden slowly begins reproducing itself with almost no extra effort. Now, step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The smartest gardens are built around cycles instead of constant replacement. And Nigella may be one of the clearest examples of that lesson anywhere in flower gardening. But while Nigella quietly reseeds delicate blooms across the garden, the next flower on this list spreads so successfully some gardeners suddenly discover entire pollinator gardens appearing almost by accident. Number 8. Larkspur. Larkspur may be one of the most elegant self-seeding flowers any gardener can grow. Tall flower spikes rising above the garden in shades of blue, purple, pink, and white. Soft cottage garden beauty, swaying gently in summer wind. And honestly, the flowers almost look too delicate to survive harsh conditions. But here's where things get interesting. Once larkspur becomes established, it often reseeds itself aggressively, year after year. Tiny seedlings quietly emerge during cooler months, long before most gardeners even begin planting spring flowers. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many flower gardens feel emotionally empty during transition seasons. There's a gap between spring bulbs and peak summer blooms, but larkspur fills that gap beautifully. Experienced gardeners understand. Timing matters emotionally in gardening. Now here's the bonus value. Pollinators absolutely love larkspur, especially bees moving constantly between the tall flower spikes during cool mornings. And because the flowers grow vertically, they create incredible depth and layering in mixed flower beds. Some gardens instantly feel larger once vertical flowers begin rising above lower blooms. Now here's the expert tip. Scatter seeds directly in fall or very early spring for best germination. Larkspur actually prefers cooler conditions during establishment, and allow mature seed heads to dry naturally before cleanup if you want continuous reseeding. Most beginner gardeners cut plants back too quickly after blooming ends. Experienced gardeners let seeds mature completely first. Now imagine this. Early summer sunlight glowing through tall blue larkspur blooms, while bees drift quietly between flowers that reseeded naturally from previous seasons. The garden feels softer, older somehow, almost timeless. That emotional atmosphere matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One rebuilds flower beds from scratch every year. The other slowly creates self-sustaining gardens where flowers quietly return on their own. The second landscape becomes dramatically more peaceful emotionally. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. Gardens become far more magical once nature begins participating in the design itself. And larkspur may be one of the most beautiful examples of that lesson anywhere in cottage gardening. But while larkspur creates elegant vertical color through self-seeding, the next flower on this list spreads so successfully many gardeners never need to purchase seeds again once it becomes established. Number 7. Bachelor's buttons. Bachelor's buttons may be one of the easiest self-seeding flowers in America. Bright blue blooms glowing against silver-green foliage. soft movement across flower beds, and nonstop pollinator activity once flowering begins. And honestly, very few flowers give beginner gardeners faster success. Now here's where things get interesting. Bachelor's buttons reseed almost effortlessly once mature blooms begin drying. In fact, some gardeners plant them once, then continue seeing fresh flowers appear naturally for decades afterward. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many flower gardens require constant spending just to maintain color every season. But bachelor's buttons quietly reduce that cycle naturally. Experienced gardeners understand the cheapest flowers long-term are often the ones reproducing themselves. Now here's the bonus value. Pollinators absolutely cover bachelor's buttons during bloom season. Bees, butterflies, beneficial insects. The flowers also make excellent cut flowers for indoor arrangements. And because they tolerate cooler weather surprisingly well, they often bloom beautifully before summer heat becomes intense. Now here's the expert tip. Allow a portion of flower heads to fully dry directly on the plant before removing them. And avoid overly thick mulch in self-seeding areas. Tiny seedlings germinate best when seeds contact exposed soil naturally. Most beginner gardeners accidentally block germination by mulching too heavily. Experienced gardeners leave small, open soil areas intentionally. Now imagine this. Cool spring breeze moving across hundreds of soft blue blooms quietly reseeded from previous seasons, while bees drift through the garden beneath morning sunlight. The entire landscape feels effortless somehow. Alive. Self-sustaining. That emotional ease matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One spends every spring constantly replacing flowers manually. The other allows reliable self-seeders like bachelor's buttons to quietly refill the landscape naturally year after year. The second garden becomes dramatically less stressful emotionally and financially. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The smartest gardens slowly reduce the amount of work required to keep them beautiful. And bachelor's buttons may be one of the easiest flowers for teaching that lesson successfully. But while bachelor's buttons quietly spread cool season beauty through the garden, the next flower on this list reseeds so aggressively some gardeners suddenly discover entire sunny hillsides covered in blooms they never planted intentionally. Number 6. California poppies. California poppies almost look unreal when entire hillsides begin blooming. Bright orange petals glowing under warm sunlight. Soft, silvery green foliage spreading naturally across dry soil. And honestly, very few flowers create the same emotional feeling once large patches begin reseeding themselves freely. Now here's where things get interesting. California poppies absolutely love poor soil and dry conditions. In fact, the tougher the conditions become, the more aggressively they often reseed. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many gardeners constantly struggle trying to improve difficult sunny areas, dry hillsides, roadside edges, hot neglected soil where delicate flowers fail quickly. But California poppies thrive exactly there. Experienced gardeners understand. The hardest spaces often become the easiest once the right flowers are chosen. Now here's the bonus value. California poppies require incredibly little maintenance once established. Pollinators love them. Drought barely slows them down. And because the flowers self-seed so effectively, entire meadows can slowly form over time with almost no extra effort. Some gardeners eventually stop planting them entirely and simply allow nature to continue the cycle. Now here's the expert tip. Avoid overly rich soil or heavy fertilizer. Poorer soil actually encourages stronger flowering and reseeding. And leave dried seed pods standing naturally after blooming finishes. Most beginner gardeners accidentally interrupt reseeding by cleaning beds too early. Experienced gardeners allow seeds to fully mature first. Now imagine this. Golden evening sunlight glowing across thousands of orange blooms quietly reseeded from previous years, while warm wind moves softly through the flowers. The entire garden feels wild, free, alive. That emotional atmosphere matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly battles dry, difficult soil trying to force delicate flowers to survive. The other fills harsh, sunny areas with self-seeding plants naturally adapted to difficult conditions. The second landscape becomes dramatically easier emotionally and financially. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. Nature often solves difficult gardening problems better than constant human effort. And California poppies may be one of the clearest examples of that lesson anywhere in flower gardening. But while California poppies quietly turn difficult soil into self-seeding color, the next flower on this list spreads so successfully many gardeners suddenly discover butterflies and hummingbirds visiting areas that used to feel completely lifeless. Number 5. Zinnias. Zinnias may be one of the happiest flowers any self-seeding garden can grow. Bright reds, Holt pinks, orange, yellow, massive blooms glowing under intense summer sunlight. And honestly, the moment zinnias begin blooming heavily, the entire garden feels energetic. Now, here's where things get interesting. Zinnias self-seed surprisingly well once flower heads dry naturally at the end of the season. In warmer climates especially, fresh seedlings often appear automatically once temperatures rise again in spring. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many summer gardens lose emotional energy by late July. Flowers weaken, pollinators disappear, beds begin looking tired, but zinnias continue producing heavy color during intense summer heat while simultaneously reseeding future generations naturally. Experienced gardeners understand the best flowers solve both present and future garden problems at the same time. Now, here's the bonus value. Butterflies absolutely cover zinnias. Some gardens become non-stop pollinator zones once large patches establish successfully. And because zinnias grow quickly from seed, empty flower beds fill surprisingly fast with very little cost or maintenance. Now here's the expert tip. Leave some mature flower heads standing late into fall rather than deadheading everything aggressively. And avoid heavy mulch in reseeding areas. Zinnia seeds germinate best when they contact exposed soil naturally. Most beginner gardeners clean flower beds too perfectly. Experienced gardeners leave room for nature to continue working. Now imagine this. Warm late summer sunlight glowing across bright zinnias while butterflies drift constantly through flowers quietly reseeded from previous years. The garden feels joyful, abundant, almost self-sustaining. That emotional ease matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly buys new flowers every spring after old plants disappear completely. The other quietly builds self-seeding pollinator gardens becoming fuller every single year. The second landscape becomes dramatically more rewarding emotionally. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. Gardens become magical once they begin participating in their own survival. And zinnias may be one of the easiest flowers for creating that magic naturally. But while zinnias fill gardens with non-stop summer color through self-seeding, the next flower on this list spreads so reliably some gardeners eventually stop thinking of it as an annual flower entirely. Number 4. Marigolds. Marigolds may be one of the most underestimated self-seeding flowers in America. Bright gold blooms, deep orange flowers glowing under summer heat, strong scent, drifting through vegetable gardens and flower beds. And honestly, very few flowers work harder in the garden for how little they ask in return. Now, here's where things get interesting. Once marigolds begin dropping seeds naturally, fresh seedlings often appear almost everywhere the following season, especially in warm, sunny gardens with exposed soil. That changes everything. Now, here's the problem this solves. Many gardens become emotionally exhausting by midsummer. Pests increase, flower beds thin out, vegetable gardens begin struggling, but marigolds quietly help solve several problems at once. Experienced gardeners understand. The best flowers often serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Now here's the bonus value. Marigolds help attract pollinators while discouraging certain pests naturally. Many gardeners plant them beside tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and raised beds, specifically for companion planting benefits. And because they reseed so easily, Entire vegetable gardens slowly begin maintaining their own protective flower borders year after year. Now here's the expert tip. Allow a few flowers to fully dry directly on the plant late in the season. The seed heads become incredibly productive once mature, and avoid over-mulching vegetable beds if you want natural reseeding nearby. Most beginner gardeners accidentally block marigold seedlings before they ever emerge. Experienced gardeners leave small open spaces intentionally. Now imagine this. Warm summer evening sunlight, glowing across bright orange marigolds, quietly reseeded along garden paths, while bees drift between flowers beside healthy vegetables. The entire garden feels productive, alive, protected. That emotional abundance matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly buys replacement companion flowers every single season. The other quietly allows self-seeding marigolds to rebuild pollinator borders naturally each year. The second garden becomes dramatically easier and more balanced emotionally. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. Nature often rewards consistency more than control. And marigolds may be one of the easiest flowers for proving that lesson beautifully. But while marigolds quietly protect and reseed through summer gardens, the next flower on this list creates towering blooms, so dramatic many gardeners cannot believe something so beautiful reproduces itself this easily. Number 3. Hollyhocks. Hollyhocks almost look too dramatic to self-seed this easily. Towering flower spikes reaching 6 to 8 feet tall. Massive blooms climbing upward in shades of pink, red, white, yellow, and deep burgundy. And honestly, the flowers make ordinary gardens feel almost historical once fully blooming. Now here's where things get interesting. Hollyhocks reseed aggressively once mature seed pods dry naturally. In fact, some old cottage gardens have maintained hollyhock colonies for decades without anyone intentionally replanting them. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many gardens lack vertical drama. Everything stays low and flat visually. But hollyhocks completely transform depth and height naturally. Experienced gardeners understand vertical flowers make gardens feel emotionally larger. Now here's the bonus value. Pollinators absolutely love hollyhocks, especially bees moving continuously across the tall flower towers during summer. And because hollyhocks reseed so heavily, fences, sheds, walls, and cottage borders slowly become covered in blooms year after year with minimal effort. Some gardens begin feeling almost storybook-like once mature colonies establish successfully. Now here's the expert tip. Leave mature seed stalks standing until completely dry before cleanup, and avoid disturbing soil heavily near existing hollyhocks during spring. Tiny seedlings emerge naturally around parent plants surprisingly easily. Most beginner gardeners accidentally destroy next year's flowers while over-cleaning garden beds. Experienced gardeners allow some controlled chaos intentionally. Now imagine this. Warm summer wind moving through towering hollyhock blooms, quietly reseeded beside old fences while bees drift constantly through the flowers beneath evening sunlight. The garden feels timeless, established, almost inherited. That emotional atmosphere matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly rebuilds flower beds from scratch every season. The other creates self-seeding cottage gardens growing fuller and richer naturally over time. The second landscape becomes dramatically more emotional and memorable. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The most magical gardens rarely appear overnight. They slowly evolve season after season through natural cycles. And hollyhocks may be one of the most beautiful flowers for creating that feeling anywhere in gardening. But while hollyhocks quietly turn gardens into self-sustaining cottage landscapes, the next flower on this list spread so successfully many gardeners suddenly realize they may never need to plant it again once it becomes established. Vidicue. Number 2. Cleome spider flower. Cleome almost looks like something from another planet once fully blooming. Tall stems, explosive pink, purple, and white flowers stretching outward like fireworks frozen in midair. Long seed pods forming beneath the blooms all summer long. And honestly, very few flowers create the same dramatic movement in a garden once wind begins moving through them. Now here's where things get interesting. Cleome self-seeds aggressively once mature seed pods dry naturally. In fact, some gardeners plant cleome one single time, then continue discovering new flowers appearing across the garden for years afterward. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many summer gardens start feeling emotionally stagnant by late season. The flowers stop surprising people. Everything becomes predictable. But cleome constantly changes the landscape naturally through reseeding. Experienced gardeners understand unexpected beauty creates emotional energy in a garden. Now here's the bonus value. Butterflies and hummingbirds absolutely love cleome. The tall flowers create incredible pollinator activity during peak summer heat when many other blooms begin slowing down. And because cleome grows vertically, it fills empty background spaces beautifully without crowding lower flowers nearby. Some gardens suddenly feel twice as large once cleome begins floating above the landscape naturally. Now here's the expert tip. Leave mature seed pods standing until they dry completely. The seeds scatter naturally once pods split open late in the season. And avoid overly thick mulch in reseeding areas. Tiny cleome seedlings germinate best in lightly disturbed soil with sunlight exposure. Most beginner gardeners accidentally prevent reseeding by cleaning beds too aggressively. Experienced gardeners allow nature to finish the cycle first. Now imagine this. Warm summer evening sunlight glowing through tall cleome flowers quietly reseeded across the garden while hummingbirds dart constantly between blooms. The landscape feels wild, layered, almost self-aware. That emotional atmosphere matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly controls every inch of the landscape rigidly. The other allows certain flowers to naturally wander and evolve over time. The second garden becomes dramatically more alive emotionally. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The most memorable gardens often contain a little unpredictability, and cleome may be one of the best flowers for creating that feeling naturally. But while cleome quietly spreads towering blooms across the garden, the final flower on this list may be one of the easiest self-seeding plants any homeowner can grow successfully almost anywhere in America. Number 1. Sunflowers plus conclusion. Sunflowers may be the ultimate self-seeding flower. Towering stems following sunlight across the sky. Massive golden blooms glowing above the garden. Birds gathering around mature seed heads in late summer. And honestly, very few flowers make people smile faster the moment they bloom. Now here's where things get interesting. Once sunflowers begin dropping mature seeds naturally, entire colonies can slowly establish themselves year after year with surprisingly little effort. In fact, some gardeners stop planting sunflowers completely after the first successful season. That changes everything. Now here's the problem this solves. Many gardens feel temporary. One season of beauty. Then everything disappears completely. But sunflowers create continuity. Seeds fall naturally. Birds scatter them. Fresh seedlings emerge in unexpected places the following spring. Experienced gardeners understand. The best gardens continue evolving, even when nobody is actively managing them. Now here's the bonus value. Sunflowers support enormous amounts of wildlife. Pollinators love the blooms. Birds feed heavily on mature seed heads, and tall stalks create shade structure and visual drama throughout summer and fall. Some gardens become full ecosystems once sunflowers establish naturally. Now here's the expert tip. Leave some mature seed heads standing into fall rather than harvesting everything immediately. Birds help spread seeds naturally while feeding, and avoid removing every fallen stalk too quickly after the season ends. Natural reseeding often happens quietly beneath old plants. Most beginner gardeners clean gardens too perfectly. Experienced gardeners allow a little natural chaos intentionally. Now imagine this. Golden evening sunlight glowing across towering sunflowers, quietly reseeded from previous years while birds feed on mature seed heads and butterflies drift through the garden. The entire landscape feels abundant, alive, almost self-sustaining. That emotional richness matters deeply. Now imagine two gardeners. One constantly rebuilds flower beds manually every season. The other slowly creates self-seeding ecosystems where flowers, pollinators, birds, and nature begin working together automatically. The second garden becomes dramatically more peaceful emotionally and financially. Now step back for a second. Experienced gardeners understand something powerful. The smartest gardens are not the ones requiring endless work. They're the ones slowly learning to take care of themselves. Now here's something important. Every flower on this list taught that lesson differently. Calendula filled empty spaces naturally. Cosmos added movement and softness. Nigella created beauty through entire life cycles. California poppies transformed difficult soil into effortless color. Marigolds protected vegetable gardens while reseeding themselves. And sunflowers turned ordinary backyards into living ecosystems overflowing with life. Because gardening becomes dramatically more rewarding once people stop fighting nature constantly and start partnering with it instead. So, if your garden has been exhausting lately, maybe you don't need more fertilizer. Maybe you don't need more expensive flowers. Maybe you simply need plants capable of continuing the work long after planting season ends. Flowers that reproduce, adapt, spread naturally, and slowly transform ordinary yards into self-sustaining gardens that become more beautiful every single year. And if this completely changed the way you think about flower gardening, make sure you subscribe. Because next week we're revealing the old-fashioned perennials older gardeners quietly grow once and enjoy for decades with almost no maintenance at all. And trust me, some of those plants may completely change the way you landscape your yard forever. Until then, keep growing, keep experimenting, and I'll see you in the next video.